this is the most confident I've been in this program. And we can talk more about the transfer portal, how they're actioning as well. But when you have Lester now and this scheme, now I have confidence in Barnett to develop guys. You have Vanomy, RVZ, the running back room coming back. We talked about you expect a top 10 defense. It's going to look different next year. But without a doubt, Iowa took a step in the right direction. And probably the most positive I felt about this program at the end of the year since probably the end of 2021.
Welcome back to the ANF Podcast. Today we're going to do a breakdown of Iowa versus Vanderbilt. How we do that is play, scheme, and mindset breakdowns. Usually we do it through an example of 4 to 5 plays. Today I think we're going to do close to 8 to 10. How we're going to interlock this with the summation of the 2025 season and look ahead, essentially tie in each play to how this explains what occurred in 2025 and how it can give a preview of 2026. Without further ado, I'll just kick it over to you for the first topics of discussion. And then we'll get into the latter half, maybe some discussions around transfers.
Yeah, but I think to kick it off for a summation of 2025 and also using the Vanderbilt game as kind of like our, way to do that, the perfect play is the Gronowski kind of closeout run. Obviously, this isn't one of the biggest plays in the game, but from an Iowa fan and the kind of the competitive aspect of this game, it's 1st and 10. We're trying to get the last first down to close out the game. And we run a read option with Vanomy kind of pulling to the backside. We leave the left DN. He crashes down just based on the outside zone look we're showing to the right. It's a great fake by the offensive line. Vanomy then loops that DN, which is like a concept from the Shanahan days with RG3 in 2013. He feeds to the backside backer. Gronowski runs up, cuts back behind the corner or like in front of the corner and picks up 9 yards. And the reason why this is summary of 2025, it's Gronowski's legs in the biggest moment. And if you look past the last 10 years of Iowa football, you'd be hard-pressed to see us get this first down easily in this situation. Generally, with 2 minutes left in the game, it's a 1st and 10 run with 10-man box and no ability to create a numbers advantage. And in this situation, you get that 9-yard run and you effectively end the game. If this is, 2020, Capital One bowl game, not Capital One, but against Kentucky, we had the opportunity to close out a running, with 3 plays and actually gave the ball back to Kentucky. And then Levis and Wandale went down the field and scored on us. And so this is just like a perfect encapsulation of Gronowski was his own entity this year. It helped play calling. And in the biggest moment in our biggest win this year, he set up the moment with his legs. And I think that's where, I hate to start negative with summation of 2025 because you're highlighting Gronowski, which was an awesome experience this year, but that's not going to be present in 2026. So we're going to talk through what that means for this offense going forward.
Yeah, if you look at essentially every clutch play that was made or every clutch drive that Iowa had in 2025, there was some attachment to the Gronowski run game. And that was the biggest differentiation we've seen from previous Iowa offenses to this one is the addition of the run game. And he is a unique QB run entity in himself. You have guys who are, 6'2", 6'3" guys who can move, can scat, can juke guys, but they don't have the durability to hang, be able to sustain a full college season between the tackles. And that's really where you were comfortable running him 7 to 10 times a game early in the season was because of his durability. And that's really just, it gives you a lens into what you want to potentially recruit, but also just he was such a unique player and such a baller in his own right that this is not going to be something that's going to return to Iowa probably in recent years. Like you just don't find a lot of 6'3", 235 guys who run a 4.5 and then also can throw the ball.
Yeah, I don't know if he's 4.5, but
he's close.
He's physical enough.
He's physical enough. He's going to be probably high 4.5s, I'd guess.
Yeah.
But moving into, we're going to have a succession of plays around DJV. I think this is our time to toot our horn when it came to predictions around him. In the summer, we got our eyes on his high school recruiting tape, and it was this moment where I think he reached out to me like at 10 o'clock on like a Tuesday night and goes, dude, you have to watch this right now.
Yeah.
This is a walk-on from, a 2-star walk-on from Carroll, Iowa. And we were just blown away by his acceleration, by his hands, and by his, essentially flexibility. Essentially what he evolved into, and I think it even exceeded our expectations, was being a true number one target. And what the number one target needs to be able to do in its ethos is be a mismatch nightmare. And we can walk through, again, a couple of plays here. But I want to start off with RPO. And this has really been the addition that Lester has brought to the Iowa offense is not just RPO, but really well integrated, well thought out RPO that has good timing. And the specific play call is an evened up 11 set where you're Vanomy is aligned to the short side of the field and you're playing a cover 6, essentially a rendition of cover 3 where the seam is going to be available to you. How Vanderbilt like to play is they have various passive alignment looks where at the snap you have linebackers and safeties with an eagerness to fit run plays because they have aligned passively, and now they're trying to invite what you consider basic run action that they can stop and fit correctly. What this then does is it puts the play side linebacker in a lot of turmoil. And funny enough, within the Tennessee-Iowa preview, you broke out...
Or the Vanderbilt-Iowa preview.
Sorry, Vanderbilt-Iowa preview, you broke out this exact concept that Vanderbilt uses. So it was, in that one, it was a Pavia RPO power run where he's going to fake a run to the wide side of the field and you're going to get a pulling guard and it's going to action that play side linebacker. This is actually something I've seen a lot from Iowa just because we do these film breakdowns. I think it's just efficient film watching, but whenever you see, there were so many plays that we would steal from the opponent we were about to play. Mm-hmm. And it's probably one of our analysts going, that's really good. Let's use a piece of that. Mm-hmm. So this is an exact example. This was something that we saw that Vanderbilt really used well, and then we turn around and use it against him. But it's just, what happens is you have that play side linebacker, he sees a pulling guard on a run action to him. So he now has to fit this to see with pace. He has to be there fast. If he's not there quickly, this can get to the second level, it's very quickly. Vanomy sneaks in behind him. You pull the ball out of the running back's stomach, and then you rip it up the seam. It's the perfect encapsulation of what RPO is successful with, is you have a counter to a counter. You have passive alignment to quick aggression, and then you use their aggression against them with a quick 10-yard pass. This works really well with guys with pace, and that's what Vanomy is. Vanomy has pace to get up the seam, and I think that's the biggest element of his game is his acceleration. He's going to have that ability to pressure teams at the seam. They're going to have to respect it in man-to-man and zone concepts, and you're going to continue to see him evolve up the seam. We actually have a couple more plays outside of that, but I'll kick it back to you for another one.
Yeah, I think in the most critical down of the game, outside of obviously that first down conversion to let us run the clock out, is the 3rd and 7 conversion that allows us to go up by 10. Let's kick a field goal late. Vanderbilt chose essentially a 0 look after the first, second of the play. They kind of have a passive alignment, blitz late, and create, one-on-one matchups all at the 10-yard, kind of right at the first down marker. Vanomy now has a one-on-one against a safety. And we're talking about like looking forward as well in this preview in 2026 and like what Vanomy has to be. And if you think back to our preview about when teams heavy up against Iowa in 2026, you're talking about cover 1 press, one high safety. You need that one man beater that can get across the field at 20 yards, and you anticipate that to be a 6-foot receiver that can run a 4.5 and be physical with the a point of attack. In this situation, Vanomy looks like this could be a man beater type guy next year. You can't use him in looping crossers. You probably can't use him in speed concepts that you would use a fast receiver, but he has a straight one-on-one with a safety, a guy who's anticipated to be more athletic than him, given their profiles. He hesitates with a fake outside, looks like he's going to hit an out route or maybe try to get vertical on him, and then shimmies back to the left and beats the one-on-one cleanly and gets the pass to him and converts it. And that type of move and that type of play is going to be how Laporta was used in 2021, how we really focus as Laporta as our 3rd down target, almost so where Michigan and Penn State were like doubling him on 3rd down, like at midfield. And I think it's a good starting point for, yes, you lose Grunowski, yes, you lose your offensive line, but you have your first legitimate tight end threat since Laporta, where you're going to be like, if they don't account for them, and tight ends are really hard to account for. There isn't really a lot of coverages you can run that give you a man advantage against them, give you comfortability, because college teams don't really have creative stuff to take away a tight end. It's not something that they have to do often. So Vanomy being the target he is going into next year, showcasing this in the bowl game, Lester has now an entire spring and summer to develop the Vanomy playbook. And that is already tied into, this pro style already using tight end usage, and he'll probably kick it up a little bit more like, critical designs. But that's always a beautiful thing to have as a coordinator, is to have an offensive piece that clearly has the ability to win one-on-ones. You can use them against zone concepts as well, but like that's going to be something that's built out going into next year. It's like, how do we get this guy the ball 7 to 10 times a game.
Well, just the guys who are dedicated in coverage to him they're not on the field to cover. Linebackers are out there to stop the run. Safeties usually don't have the size to match him in, one-on-one concepts. So that's where the issue presents. And then you're technically a slot receiver. Now you have ability to go inside and outside to both sides of the field. And that's really where, that's why Travis Kelce's been such a dominant force for the Kansas City Chiefs, is because of that versatility. And just, again, you're not getting the Jalen Ramsey on you. You're getting a linebacker most of the time in man-to-man. The next concepts I'd like to break out, I'm just going to do 2 in a row because they kind of mesh together. But this is an evolution of Leicester's passing game. And I think this is why I got a little sad about where we could have been if we had Gronowski in the spring. The first one you had is the Vanomy, 57-yard catch. Maybe it might not have been that long, but you had a passive alignment from Vanderbilt, very much how you just broke it out. They end up setting their 2 middle linebackers. So how this was likely set up in the pre-snap was that you probably had an option route for Vanomy where if they stay in their typical passive alignment zone drop, you're going to get to a hooded post. You're trying to get over the top of this play side linebacker. Because both linebackers come, you have the option then to quickly sit down. Gronowski, follows that path. He goes, okay, I see 2-man pressure from the interior. I know Vanomy's going to sit down here. He puts a ball outside and away so that he can clear his feet and beat the safety. But what it exemplifies is what we saw in Vanomy was this flexibility and athleticism where he's able to keep his feet and then the chug, that acceleration. When I watched it back for the first time, it's like, how is this guy is clearly going to be a top 3-round tight end. If he improves his blocking to somewhere between Hawkinson and Kittle, maybe like Laporta wasn't really even that great of a blocker, but he's 100% could be a 2nd or 3rd rounder, and potentially might be next year. But you just saw that acceleration, and that's such a big piece of this guys at this size. The next is the hooded post on 1st and 20. So we call for hooded post against this team because of their linebacker play. You're going to have this kind of stop-start action where they're going to open up, and you have such depth from the safeties. There's this element where you can get to your hooded post with the tight end, and they used it in a perfect moment, the 1st and 20. So you have, again, pass alignment, too high look. Linebackers actually drop into coverage here. So, again, pace and acceleration out of Vanomy is the key here. He's going to have to get over the top of this play side linebacker, and what you could call it a lookie as well, where you get over the top and you bring your eyes back to the QB, and he's going to snap on you. The beauty of the evolution is that you have Weegan on an outside drag route coming underneath, and that pulls so when the linebacker gets into his drop, his eyes are going to go outside to see if he has a crossing route that he needs to come down on. His eyes go outside. He sees Weegan, who has that pressure of making plays in the game. You want to be quick to those guys. So he, instead of taking his full drop, he snaps to Weegan. Gronowski, what I've seen a lot in this type of scheme in college football is that guys do not stay on one long enough. They see that initial drop. They don't trust that your guy's going to clear, and they come down that drag, and then that well-timed linebacker that just saw the breaking in drag comes and murders your interior route. Gronowski stays on one, snaps on it, makes a great throw. You get the hooded post look where the safety collision's late, but it's too late, and you get 18 yards. And that's really like that evolution of using vertical routes to create pressure, staying on one long enough, having a secondary receiver who has a threat of speed to pull that secondary defender. There's that really well married together, well schemed, well understood from Gronowski's perspective. That was really cool to see. And again, like this seam pressure that Vanomy is going to create in 2026, it's all going to be built around the seam pressure. Yeah. And it's such a problem.
Yeah. I think, and that's target number 1 going into next year. Obviously, we don't know what our portal acquisitions are going to be in the receiver room, but you have to assume now Vanomy has the highest chance of leading the team in receiving, catches, targets, everything. Just given on this performance, given on what his ceiling is, and given that what Iowa is, it's tight end U for a reason. The second target, and I think to showcase, what expectations will be for RVZ next year, is that fade route. And just a one-on-one RPO concept, not much to break down other than this is a one-on-one ball from the start. It's inside zone fake. It's going to RVZ. We highlighted number 4 as the cornerback you want to attack in, fade concepts, given that Coleman from Auburn, leaped over him twice. RVZ has now showcased this as not just, once in a blue moon, I'll make a contested catch. He has stacked multitude of these in the Nebraska game, in the Minnesota game, Michigan State last year. Like, he has the ability to make tough contested catches, leaving his feet with the body control and strength he has and his hands, even when he doesn't have that good of separation. And so we talk about Vanomy having to be, a portion of the playbook. If you're going to lose Gronowski's legs, you're going to lose the offensive line, you're going to have a different concepts of how we're going to be efficient on offense. Once again, you have to now chunk out, what is our RVZ plays? What does RVZ's red zone playbook look like going into 2026? How are we going to use them on third downs in creative ways? And I think it's going to be a difficult thing for Kirk to get behind, because this is a step away from where Iowa usually lives. And, Brandon Smith never really got the opportunity to showcase that one-on-one ball catching enough. And it's really just kind of a hard thing to call as a play caller, because you're just leaving it up to a one-on-one game. But we didn't use Brandon Smith enough his last 2 years in these concepts, because he was so efficient with those catches, right? He almost, I feel like he won 80% of them. RVZ has the opportunity to win, upwards to 80% of them if you give him the opportunity to. And so it's going to be interesting how we handle that. Like, we have this red zone option. We have this fade concept that's going to be legitimate next year. And other teams, and especially in the NFL, you see them, go to this in big situations. What is our, appetite for that? Because we might not have the same buttons we're pushing this year. Are you going to lean more towards this kind of like one-on-one ball that eliminates your line of scrimmage? It eliminates, what your team is kind of built on, toughness, and kind of plays this kind of high wire act. But he's so fucking efficient at it. Why not be more aggressive with it? So I think that's going to be a really interesting element next year. How are we going to use RVZ and fade concepts? How do we use his best ability? Because clearly he's identified himself and showcased himself to be good at this.
So Hecklinski, what we saw from the spring game and a little bit of not the spring game, but the fall scrimmage, is he throws a really exceptional fade shot, and that QB pocket seems to be his real talent. I think it's not only the fade shot, but you want to start looking into how Indiana's used Surratt. So there's so many of those plays where when they get man-to-man leverage and the guy's trying to stay over top of them, they hit those deep comebacks and those deep back shoulders. That's really what needs to then be added into RBC's playbook, where you can be more of a dynamic receiver rather than just that 50-50 fade shot. I do think Lester is seen more comfortable being randomly aggressive on a first and second down around the 25 to 30 yard line with one-on-one throw. So I think that's been a bit of a deviation. I think Brian was more reluctant, that offensive lineman mentality. Let's not take an opportunity out of our offensive lineman's hands to go punch him in the face. So we'll see how that evolves. I think as a true number two, though, it's cool because we talked about this in the preseason. Within Lester's scheme of these reduced sets, you kind of have an inversion of your tight end and X receivers' responsibilities. Now the X receivers are your end man in the line of scrimmage. They can be seen as almost wide tight ends where they're going to wall down. You can use them in crack formations. You can use them to block linebackers. They now need to have really strong blocking ability. And RBZ with his size and continued strength, that's going to continue to improve. Now, and then you add in now Vanomy's ability to get outside the numbers, use his space and pace to run out routes, out-breaking routes to man up safeties and linebackers. Those two are going to really marry well together next year. Moving into what Vanderbilt did well. So my favorite play or my favorite concept they used was we broke out in the pregame how they had a lot of curl techniques that they used in their passing attack, but they did it in a really unique fashion on one particular set. And I think it was kind of a rendition. It was kind of an explanation of this really awkward missed tackles that we had from the secondary from Iowa. But this particular play, they got into a 12 personnel set. They lined up two tight ends to the boundary. And then so we play usually in our 4-3, we play our 4-3 linebacker to the field. So you have Rex Roth on a receiver head up with two guys in coverage over the top of him. So you're in a 3-on-2. You should be okay to the wide side of the field. They run a really unique concept. So the inside receiver runs a flag route. Your outside receiver runs a whip and then return curl to the flat. So you actually have him moving to the sideline and actually back to the line of scrimmage. And this really, I don't think I've ever seen this type of route before. But what it does is it creates space with this secondary level or this first level defender in Rex Roth. And then he's able to get Rex Roth in a one-on-one, and because it's linebacker and receiver, he beats him rather cleanly. And I think what it's playing on, you might see teams in the future use this type of technique more often because how Iowa's defense defensive zone aligns is it's very much you want to get to your depth and then you want to play forward.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're susceptible then to is underneath routes where if you get a scatty guy underneath, he then can, if you create enough space for him, he then can beat that first level defender in a juke or some kind of speed game, and that allows for quick action. And that's what Vanderbilt did over and over again. They did a lot to our squat corner too, where they knew that the squat corner's depth was going to be at 6 to 7 yards. We're going to run a curl at 2, and then we're going to bank on our guy being able to beat Hall on these like reverse out catch and runs. And they did that 2 or 3 times where it's like, I think that's going to be stolen. Whenever you see teams put up 300, 400 yard passing against Iowa, everyone's going to come to this film and say, how did they do this in the passing game?
Yeah.
And granted, Pavia ripped someone 70-yard passing. That's how you got some serious numbers.
Yeah, and I'd say Richardson is, going to go play for Alabama next year.
Exactly.
I think when you try to emulate Richardson
over the top
anybody,
speed, yeah.
Yeah, that's not something that's going to be schematic.
But I think this curl game is going to get stolen because it was really unique and it was just painful for us. We're like, make these tackles. This is what we do. We let you catch in front and we tackle. We didn't do it for most of the game.
And to encapsulate the 2025 season, also look forward to 2026. I'll do back-to-back plays. The first one is our 4th and 1 stop. We mentioned Pavia is going to be used in the QB run game at 4th and short. He was on a power concept. We really want to highlight Llewellyn and Herkett and Graves. These guys were technicians that have developed in this program all year. Maybe you want to have them listed as high NFL draft picks after this year. But the beauty of developing these guys for a long time is they understand the scheme, they understand how to execute, and it really played out in 4th and 1s and 4th and shorts all year. We had a bunch of 4th and 1 stops against Indiana, Penn State, and USC in critical moments that really gave this defense that wasn't really great at getting sacks or, getting out the field early, but 4th and 1, it was unreal because you had senior-laden guys that understood the scheme. And on this power concept, they run to the short side of the field, where we teach our DNs, if you get a down block, the first thing you do is ride that. So if you see a tackle or tight end down block, you need to get your hands on that guy and actually ride it with him and shove him down. So Llewellyn sees the down block, rides it instantly, gets his hands on him, shoves him almost out of Montgomery's way. So the tight end's going to reach Montgomery. That's his goal, is to down block and create a wall. He pushes the tight end past him. He has a pulling guard to him. What you have to do is, we talk about power concepts the entire time, is the season, is get your inside shoulder to his inside shoulder. He dips under it, basically takes on 2 blocks there and wins it completely. Pavia is supposed to run under that guard block. He's at that tight end down block, the pull, that's his lane. And Llewellyn sits right in it. And then you have great identification by Wampa and Montgomery, who are quick to the hole. Llewellyn wins the first play, but given that Shire also takes the inside shoulder of the running back and Montgomery fills perfectly and he's able to dodge that tight end that Llewellyn, kind of got off his feet, then he meets him in the hole. And it's just that classic Montgomery fire hydrant play where, he's not the biggest guy. And he's, honestly, it's funny watching him and Pavia hit each other, just like the same dude playing football. But he just has the leverage in that moment to then stick him. And it sucks that it wasn't a 4th down stop because, you watch Pavia all year. That wasn't an immensely aggressive look by Iowa. 4th and 1s and any QB runs in the SEC were dominant. And now you're talking about the first time Iowa saw it, they stick it a half yard behind the line. That's just showcasing Iowa doesn't have the SEC,
DN
combine 330-pound D tackle, 270-pound 4.5 DN. But football comes down to just understanding your assignment. And as long as you can play fast and play in the right hole and be anticipatory, that's how you have a top 10 defense every year. And I think that encapsulates Iowa this year. If I want to look at Iowa defense going forward, and I know we lose Entringer now, but Iowa had, not a flashy front 7.
You're not going to have a single draft pick above round 5.
Yeah, Graves, we'll see where he goes, but he's going to be 4 or 5. It's not prototypical D tackle size. Obviously, he's a great player, but you're not going to have anyone who started this year in the front 7 that's going to go super high. And you had a top 10 defense against Indiana, Oregon, USC, Penn State, Iowa State, offenses that were clicking at those times. Obviously, Penn State had Druckenmeier, but when we came into this year, we were pretty down on our defense after last year. They had performances against UCLA and Michigan State that were in Missouri that were just we're just not to the same level. And maybe we were hiding out in the Big Ten West. And it was going to be well, are we going to be a top 15 defense this year, top 20? And now you look at, we didn't have insane NFL talent. You had a really strong secondary in terms of safety play. You played a really hard schedule, and you finished 7th in the SP Plus on defense. And where I'm looking forward, like 2026, 2027, 2028, I have a hard time believing we're not going to be top 10 defense for the rest of the time Phil's here and under Kirk. You cannot convince me that this scheme, like the way we're teaching it and all the time we've put into developing the scheme, the personnel is now, it's pretty clearly interchangeable at the highest levels of competition. So that's my takeaway from this game, and that play is just, I'm very confident. You're going to tell me, yeah, we lose a bunch of players next year. Guess what? Like, Phil's just had an absolutely prove-it-out season, and I think that's where I live with this defense going forward.
I mean, you made a good point, though. It's all about the timeliness of fourth down stops, and then also our red zone defense plays in that same scheme. It's like when you get us to short yardage, that's where we're meant to be. That's where we're technically sound. We're not making mistakes there. I think the big piece that you missed is X. When you have a free safety playing as essentially an extra linebacker, that extra body and what you can do with that from a numbers perspective, and I think about how many plays he made within the short yardage game, that's where you're not going to be there next year.
Yeah.
Like that was a very unique piece, and I think you might take a step back from as a short yardage team, because it's not only that he's going to come up and run Phil, but you could also leave him on an island with a tight end. It's not a Schulte or a corner. You feel better about him in man-to-man than those guys. So I think that's where maybe you change. But it also gives a lens in the field. It's like, hey, instead of playing the walk on there, how about we get another tackling athlete back there who can move around?
Yeah.
So it's like you want to have the analytical dude who can decipher defenses, get you the right looks, maybe action some calls that are going to be beneficial to you. But sometimes it just benefits yourself to go five athletes back there, send 6, and just figure it out.
Yeah.
So last thing I'll talk about, and then we'll get into discussion of the transfers, do a really brief discussion on that, is the Richardson shot when we was 21-3. I think the reason I like this so much is because it kind of moves into the analytical level of football that I think we're transitioning into, like even the evolution of AI. I think there's probably going to be some really odd play calls coming up, that because the timing of this just doesn't make any sense. You're playing Iowa. It's 21-3 in the third quarter. It's 1st and 10. You're backed up on your own 25. I would have guessed 7,000 times out of 7,000 times that this is going to be off coverage, backup defense.
Quarters.
Phil Parker on 1st and 10. You end up coming with your field side blitz. Vandy has the perfect call on. It's an RPO, 7-man protection, max protect, deep shot to Richardson. And I 100% believe that this was algo-driven play calling. Either we had not called our field side blitz on 1st and 2nd down. They knew that eventually the field side blitz out of our 4-3 against an open look or whatever it is coming. So whatever it was is predictive in some manner to get that call. Granted, it could have just been well-timed, but
it could have just been, they are down 18.
Yeah, that's true. But it seems like if you're Vanderbilt and you're trying to get back into the game, because if you call that play against a 7 drop, it's a 3-on-7.
Yeah, it is a 3-on-7, but it's a 1-on-1.
But you're going to get such depth from your because the issue is that you have Hall in a squat where he doesn't get enough depth early.
But we were in squat pretty much all game.
I know.
So,
but he's his worry with a blitz is that Richardson's going to run an inside crosser and beat him for 70.
Yeah.
So like if you have guys there, he can just get depth instantly. Snap. It's all about the depth he doesn't get right away.
Yeah.
You could see he's thinking inside drag, and that's what leads to it. But what my point about this for 2026 is you've transitioned to speed corners. You're now playing Lee Watson as your top 2 guys. You're now in pressure looks most of the game. To the wide side of the field, you saw corners aligning at 2 yards for the predominant portion of the game against speedy guys. You had Sherrills get down the seam or down the sideline on Watson one time. What this is going to now set up is because you have Lutmer, Watson, Lee, these are not big body guys, but they have a ton of speed. So what you're going to do is you're going to align them more aggressively, bake in or bait teams to go deep on you. You don't really want action to the flats. You don't really want sweeps to the flats because you don't want them playing through guys. So it's going to kind of invert your typical Phil Parker looks where you're going to again see probably more 5 pressure looks. You're going to see more aggression from an alignment perspective. And it's all going to be based around who your corner personnel is. And that's what we're going to continue to see. And those guys need to get better at it because they got shell-shocked for most of the game.
Yeah, but that's how we played all year.
Yeah.
It was an evolution of Phil. It was a much more, I think we saw in 2022 with Riley and Cooper, much more aggressive cornerback sets, just trusting that they're going to run with everybody.
Well, I think it's a reflection of the offenses you're playing. So when you play teams in your typical too high off coverage look, if you're not pressuring the QB well with your 4-man pressure, and then you're playing, talented QB and receivers with really good timing and understanding of, progressions and scheme, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And that's what we saw against Missouri, where it was just isolated, talented receiver on a safety, isolated, talented receiver on a linebacker, and this is over and over of guys wide open, easy throws. And then when that didn't happen, you had an athletic QB and Cook running around. I think that's really where he had to rethink his idea around how do I want to play to my actual personnel. So I'm not going to get home with 4. How can I make the timing at least difficult on the back end? And really what man-to-man pressure does is it disrupts timing. So the most difficult part about throwing the ball downfield is just the timing aspect of it. The QB has to release it at a certain point with an expectation that the receiver is going to be in a certain spot and the ball is going to get there at that exact time. If you can disrupt timing with a jab or with even some physicality at the top of the route, that's where all that inconsistency of a passing attack arises, and that's where you give yourself a chance. And that's where most college teams just can't get to that level of execution. And although it looks dangerous and old coordinators just have a very difficult time of not calling it, it's still a high wire act. And that's why you're seeing Phil, I think, go to it more often than not. It's just because it's forcing a higher level of execution against teams that are talented in that aspect.
Even Indiana struggled against it.
Exactly.
And I think it's time to just wrap up 2025 with, you finished with.
Next time you're looking for an all-inclusive beach vacation, consider Via Puesta del Sol or Via Puerto Escondido, both of which overlook the Pacific Ocean in Ocotal, Costa Rica, providing an exceptional all-inclusive experience for your family and friends. Visit their website, linked down below, for more information or to reserve your trip today. The ANF Podcast is sponsored by Eye Surgeons Associates, proudly serving Eastern Iowa and Western Illinois for all your eye care needs for over 40 years.
In the SP Plus, you were 12th. You broke in the top 40 on offense. You were top 10 defense again. In every way, this was a step up and a leveling up of Iowa. You are now going to be having Indiana, Oregon in the national title game favored. They will both be favored against Miami or Ole Miss. Oregon probably favored by 1 and maybe against Miami, which I think Indiana's favored by maybe 4 or 5. And you took both of those teams the last 2 minutes. And you
should have beat Indiana.
A couple bounces. After the Lutmer pick, you should have beat them. I was definitely the most competitive team since 2018. I think 2018, you look back and everyone's like, well, that was a different type of squad. Like there was immense talent on 2018 and they fell short in a lot of big, areas. But this is the most confident I've been in this program. And we can talk more about the transfer portal, how they're actioning as well. But when you have Lester now in this scheme and, how you now have confidence in Barnett to develop guys, you have Vanomy, RVZ, the running back room coming back. We talked about you expect a top 10 defense. It's going to look different next year. But without a doubt, Iowa took a step in the right direction. And probably the most positive I felt about this program at the end of the year since probably the end of 2021, after you lost a close game to Kentucky in the last moments, as we brought up earlier. But you had like Linderbaum and Campbell, and DeJean was a freshman that year. Like you just felt like we were a talented team. And that's where you kind of sit in the same boat where like Iowa knows what they're doing. And it's crazy. Ferentz is in going to be year 28 next year? And he's outpacing younger and like programs like Rule and Fickle and Fleck. And he's kind of made small iterations, changes. Obviously, Lester hire is a huge thing, but the way we've attacked the portal, and I think that's just a good time to talk about our acquisitions, is it's differentiated. Like
it's intelligent.
It's intelligent. I think I can bring up one just kind of comparison program. Is Minnesota just brought in a tackle from, it would have been Tennessee. Maybe they brought in an Auburn guy as well. Tennessee, former top 100 recruit, was at LSU originally, decommitted from I don't know if he played a year and then transferred. So he's been at 2 major programs, and now he's going to Minnesota. And it's like, that's the last guy Iowa wants. Like, if you ask Kirk, like, would you take this guy as a former, top 100 4-star? He'd be like, hell no, I'm not taking that guy. That is the antithesis of what this program wants to be. This guy is like, has immense talent, but hasn't turned out. Like, that's just not who we're looking for. Because he's going to come in with an ego. He's going to come in with expectations that he's kind of doing you a favor for playing for you. And we're doing the opposite. Like, the idea that we're grabbing FCS freshman All-Americans and bring them to Iowa is like legitimately the most exciting thing for me, because as a developmental program, the opportunity to say we missed a guy and now we get him, like that is, yes, you're going to lose Entringers. Yes, you're going to lose Brian Allens, but the opportunity to grab like 4 guys that are like probably top 200 in their class now, probably have like NFL aspirations in some capacity at like a young age, and you get 2 to 3 years to develop those guys, like that is massive opportunities for Iowa to kind of like use everything they do. This is still a culture fit because he's leveling up. He's going to be happy to put on the jersey. He's going to work his ass off. He's got a chip on his shoulder, but he also has the talent to like have a ceiling as well. So obviously Hawthorne's in the same boat, but like I love the idea of this.
I like if they were 1-year guys, I wouldn't understand it as much, just because you're trying to then catch them up to speed, and then guys who are more familiar with the technique and schemes that you're trying to play are going to get upset by that. But when you do this developmental transfer acquisition, I think that's, like you said, that's the perfect way to get into what Iowa wants to be. Mm-hmm. And the pieces you brought in, that the end looks like, Hawkeye Gameful made a perfect comparison. It looks like a Nate Meyer.
Yes.
Oxstrong is able to use his bull rush effectively. Is going to be really difficult in the run game. Doesn't look like the most bendy guy of all time, but he's going to fit really well into the 4-3 scheme. You bring a long-rangey safety to, maybe fill in at free safety. We were just talking about how you want maybe an athlete and tackler back there. That seems like a perfect piece for that. So, again, I'm really excited with where their idea is at, because you're going to be able to bring these guys in probably at the same pay that all their counterparts are at too. You're not going to overpay for these guys. So then that really fits into almost like a corporate structure where the guys who are the longest on the team make the most money. If you've been at Iowa, you've been a team captain, a returning starter, you get a pay bump because you've sold it. You've put blood and sweat into this program. You're not going to have this disjointed guys coming in making more money, even though they're not as talented, haven't went through 2 or 3 Iowa fall camps, and that then feeds into this integrated culture that they're trying to create. It's like they've kind of figured out their niche. Is it going to be these bringing in these lower tier guys?
This was a huge year of growth for ANF, like definitely, 2X, 3X this podcast. We really appreciate the support from, Chris Hassel throughout the entire season, pumping our stuff and just, really giving us exposure to the broader Iowa audience. Obviously, Lystico wrote a great article and, gave us an opportunity to showcase our personal lives, which is we don't do often on the show. And then going back to day one listeners, like, DOP, all the burners that we've interacted with our entire, at the first season, those guys, you guys found us first and, dove deep into our stuff and really supported us.
Elliot Clough.
Yeah.
Reaching out, 3 episodes in, wanting to connect.
Yeah.
2 new guys in the beat at the time. And, we love Elliot. He's been great to develop friends with him. And like a guy who just immediately, supported us, wanted to interact.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then all the, guys that our first season that are still listening, and now you're seeing their comments going, I'm so happy this podcast is growing, and it's improving over time. It's just iterations of like listeners and support that, you put a lot of time and energy in this. It's great to see it reciprocated in the community that this is about. And it's more so just now, you show up to Iowa games and you have people that are like-minded, they talk to you and you're like, this person is just me in a different, form.
Yeah,
it's just an Iowa fan that's like super deep into it. Generally, they have more knowledge about the boards and other like insider information than we do. And it's just like we express it in different ways, and we use it through the pod. But everyone who's an Iowa fan at this level and that's listening to the pod this time, you guys could be doing this in some fashion as well. You do it through Twitter or conversations, but everyone's really doing their own Iowa pod, when they have beers with a buddy.
Yeah, it's just hilarious because so many times you'll get these conversations and I feel out of depth almost because they're like 2 steps ahead of you. They know all the storylines.
Yeah,
and it's just from being isolated in Minneapolis and only having a couple Iowa fans around us to be able to then step into like these Iowa cultures where it's just like everyone knows everything. There's no the narratives are all congruent, and it's just been a really fun experience.
It's how we grew up. You grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and everyone's Hawks, and the people that are Hawks, they're intense, and that's how you kind of gravitate towards. So it's just awesome to kind of be back in that community.
Yeah, very thankful for it. So thank you. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.